What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Backup Fantasy Sports. It is Thursday, August 4th. My name is Ewan, and today we will be getting into some fantasy football ranking debates. It is officially August, like I said, August 4th, so it is time to get into fantasy football as it kicks into high gear before the season kicks off in September. First off, just want to say that you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Overcast, like and subscribe, all those fun things. And you can follow me on Twitter at UIN or U Out. That's EUAN or U Out. This season for fantasy football, I will be writing at rotoballer.com. I'll be doing their NFL DFS values column each and every week for the entire season and throughout the playoffs. Very excited to be doing that for a third straight season. And also on my Twitter feed, I will be retweeting my DFS baseball articles, the fantasy Premier League roundtable we do each week, and everything in between, including some hopefully helpful tips. But let's get into what we're doing today. So for the next 4 weeks, I will be going position by position and breaking down the top 12 quarterbacks, top 12 tight ends, top 24 running backs, and to be decided if it's going to be the top 24 or 36 wide receivers, but I'm going to be going to fantasypros.com and looking at their ECR, their expert consensus rankings, and going through each and every player, seeing what can go right, what can go wrong, what I agree with, what I disagree with. And then at the end of each episode, I'll give my own personal top 12, 24, 36 rankings at the position. So this batch of ECR for the quarterbacks is current as of August 4th when I checked. So if you're listening to this a couple of weeks after, there could be some changes, but hopefully not too much, because that would mean there's been some injuries or some certain Cleveland Browns quarterback gets a longer extension or suspension from what they've been up to in the past couple of years. So right now on Fantasy Pros, the top 12 is Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, and Trey Lance. Whew. And no, you don't have to adjust your speakers or your headphones. Back-to-back MVP Aaron Rodgers is not among the top 12 quarterbacks at the moment after a up and down offseason in Green Bay, I would say. So I'm just going to go through each of those guys one by one, talk about what could go wrong, what could go right, and then kind of give my opinion at the end. So first up is Josh Allen. He's coming into his 5th season with the Buffalo Bills. Over the last 3 seasons, he's come in as QB1, and QB6. Not too shabby. Last year, he had 36 touchdowns to 15 interceptions for 4,400 passing yards, 6 rushing touchdowns for another 763 rushing yards. That was a career high. But what could go right for the QB1 in fantasy football circles? Well, he could improve on his TD rate. Per Andrew Erickson on Fantasy Pros, Allen's 2021 touchdown rate sat at 5.6%, which was 9th among quarterbacks, with Gabriel Davis's presumed breakout from the rest of the fantasy football community, plus the additions of Jamison Crowder and James Cook in the NFL draft. I think Allen will continue to put up elite fantasy numbers and continue his he will increase his touchdown rate here, and I'm thinking a possible 40 touchdowns in the passing department for the Buffalo Bill at 26 years old. What could go wrong for Allen, though? The rushing touchdowns suffer. At the NFL League meeting earlier this year, Bills head coach Sean McDermott said he would like to see Allen run less. So that would cap his upside, obviously, if he didn't run, but I was just curious what would happen. So even if you took away all of Allen's rushing production over the last 2 seasons, he still would have been QB 11 both seasons. That's not happening in 2022, that all the rushing is not going up. I think if the rushing goes down a little bit, then I only expect the passing to go up. The the Bills are built around Josh Allen. He's their goal line back. He's become phenomenal through the air. Him and Stephon Diggs regularly hooking up and just giving us big play after big play. And if Gabe Davis takes that step forward, and if James Cook can become that pass catching option out of the backfield, there's only good things happening for Josh Allen in 2022. I think he has the highest floor among all the upper tier quarterbacks heading into 2022 because he has a pretty consistent surrounding cast, and I don't see a ton of downside. I don't think all that rushing production is going away. So Josh Allen firmly belongs up at top at QB1. Next up in Fantasy Pros ECR was Justin Herbert, entering his third year. Last 2 seasons, he came in as QB2 and QB9. He really broke out in Brandon Staley's offense, though, with 38 touchdowns to 15 interceptions and snuck over the 5,000 passing yards mark. 3 rushing touchdowns, 1 fumble lost, and 300 rushing yards. So he can still get it done on the ground as well. He's not as prolific as Josh Allen, obviously, but there could be room for growth there. What could go right for the third-year signal caller? Well, it's the second year in Brandon Staley's offense, so there could be a leap right there with some consistency for Herbert finally. And also the entire offense returns with Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams re-signed, and even Josh Palmer coming back. I am hopeful for a breakout for Josh Palmer, and then that's going to be a lot of weapons, including they added Gerald Everett in the offseason at tight end, so he can provide them a safety blanket. Herbert easily has 45 total touchdown upside, possibly even 50 if he gets a few more on the ground, even like 2 or 3 more. And then you could easily see that leap from 38 to about 43, 44 passing touchdowns if this Staley offense goes on the trajectory it showed in year 1. The offensive line is only getting better as well. Their first round pick from last year was phenomenal. And as long as they don't do Chargers things where they usually get injuries in the preseason that seems to derail them every year, if Staley can maybe calm down on the questionable 4th downs at times and just become a more efficient head coach in his play calling, that could also steer Herbert in the right way. As for my opinion, I do think Herbert can challenge Allen for QB1 this year, but the fact that Allen is consistently getting into the end zone with his legs and giving us 6 points in the ground, I think that just is a little bit too much of a difference for Herbert to make up. So he'll challenge him. I know in the Scott Fish Bowl this year, a lot of teams were taking Herbert QB1 over Allen. I had the first pick in my Munich division. I went with Allen just for safety. It was my first year, so I just try to... the shiny new toy is always fun to get on your team. I've drafted him in a couple of other charity leagues that I've done this year, but I went with Allen in Scott Fish Bowl, and I have no regrets. Next up in the quarterback rankings is Patrick Mahomes here, another AFC West quarterback, entering his 6th season already. That's crazy, but he did pretty much sit out that first year. Over the last 3 years, he's put up QB4, QB4, and QB8 rankings in the season long. Last year, he had 37 touchdowns to 13 picks with 4,800 passing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 4 fumbles lost, and 381 rushing yards with a career high. So what could go right for Patrick Mahomes in 2022? Well, the Chiefs could look super smart, and the Tyreek Hill trade could pay off dividends with, they signed Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman still there, drafted Sky Moore, Travis Kelce's obviously still there. Ronald Jones in the backfield was added to complement Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But that is mostly it. I think I'm not sure if Mahomes has the QB1 upside right now because Hill was so good for those explosive plays. Kelce can pop one off every now and then, but every time Hill got the ball in his hands, it was definitely exciting to watch, and you didn't really know where that play was going. So what could go wrong? Obviously, losing Tyreek Hill, that's a massive deal for Mahomes and his deep threat, his explosive plays. I do trust Mahomes and Andy Reid to figure it out. I don't think the Chiefs committed so much money to Mahomes. I'm not sure if, we'll never know, but I'm not sure if the Hill trade would have gone through without some input from Mahomes and Andy Reid. I think if they were fully on board with Tyreek still playing for the Chiefs, he would still be there. So that's what could go wrong. Without Hill, teams can double Kelce. Can they take him out of the passing game? And then you are relying on Juju Smith-Schuster, who hasn't done it for 2 years. Mecole Hardman, who has been the presumed prince to King Tyreek for his entire NFL career. And then the rookie Sky Moore. It's going to be very interesting to see where this Chiefs team go. Obviously, you kind of trust them until they don't get it done. But I do think Allen and Herbert definitely have higher upside and possibly a better floor than Mahomes. And this might be the tier here. These QB 1, 2, 3, that could be the top echelon. That's not how I have it ranked, just to tease my rankings at the end of the episode. But I do understand why Mahomes is currently the third ranked quarterback on Fantasy Pros. Next up is Lamar Jackson. And I am fully on board the Lamar Jackson train this offseason, despite not having a contract settled, but QB1, QB10, and QB8 in points per game. He only played 12 games last year, so I went with the points per game route. He was QB15 overall. But when you have a finish as QB1, the rushing is still there. Mark Andrews, just everything about Lamar makes me want to draft him, and that's why he is my second ranked quarterback in my top 12 rankings. And what could go right for him? The Ravens finally get it together. Lamar can stay healthy. He can play all 17 games. That would be a huge step in the right direction. Last year was a step back in the passing department, though. 16 touchdowns, 13 interceptions for only 2,800 yards, and only 2 rushing touchdowns, 3 fumbles lost, and 700 yards on the ground. Obviously missed 5 games, but it is definitely something to keep an eye on. I think some people will be almost too down on Lamar. It doesn't seem that way, obviously, as he comes in as the QB4. But with him going from QB1 to QB10 and then getting injured, I am curious to see we're in August now, so there's going to be a lot more of your home league drafts, the public coming in and showing us the ADP of Lamar Jackson outside of like the NFC, where there's people playing for hundreds of thousands of dollars. It will be very curious to see where Lamar ends up in the public eye as the season draws closer. So what could go wrong? I mean, he just continues this downward trajectory that's been going this way since his MVP season. The Ravens are still not giving him a contract. That is a little concerning there, but I believe that he's just had a couple of bad situations, a couple of back-to-back bad years, and I would expect Lamar to easily crack the top 5 quarterbacks this year. So that's my verdict. I love Lamar Jackson this year. He might be the quarterback I target the most in one quarterback leagues when it is home league draft season and you're in your snake draft. And he's got plenty of upside, obviously, as QB1 just 3 seasons ago. Next up is someone I am not so much in on in Kyler Murray. With the Cardinals, they have a late bye week 13, which should help Kyler because he can't even make it to November without getting banged up. He's entering his 4th season. He went QB4 in points per game last year and then was QB2 the year before and QB7. But major bad vibes in the offseason for Kyler. Last season, he played 14 games, 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 3,700 passing yards, 5 touchdowns on the ground, but 13 fumbles, but 0 of them were lost. So he needs to work on that ball security for sure. What could go right for the fourth-year quarterback out of Oklahoma? The offense finally comes together under Cliff Kingsbury in year 5 for the former Texas Tech head coach. Kyler stays healthy for the full year, kind of uses the whole contract clause and general bad vibes as a chip on his shoulder and puts it all together and has an MVP caliber season. Hooks up with Marquise Brown as long as nothing comes from this speeding ticket that Brown got a couple of days ago, or last night, 2 nights ago. And we'll see how it goes. But what could go wrong? This is where I get very scared about Murray. There's a lot of things that can go wrong here. The absence of Christian Kirk, he's gone. DeAndre Hopkins is gone for 6 games for a suspension. James Conner comes back to earth / gets injured. That often happens with James Conner. And the Cardinals are relying on Darrell Williams to get things done in the backfield. Kyler can get injured at any time. He's obviously a small guy, and he does get banged up. Even though he played all 16 games 2 years ago, it was clear that he was not at his best self after a midseason injury, and then he sat out 3 games last year. Kyler gets injured. Redbirds end up with a top 5 draft pick, a new head coach, and a semi-rebuild is on their hands. They've invested in some veterans. They've got J.J. Watt on their team. A.J. Green is there. It seems like this could be the last hurrah for the Cliff Kingsbury era in Arizona. And if Kyler doesn't pull it out by himself, unfortunately for him, it could be a tough go for the Cardinals in 2022. I'm just not a Kyler believer. Being banged up, that offense is worse than last season. I don't think there's any debating that. So he's just not in my thoughts. Obviously, he has the upside of QB2 that just had 2 years ago, but I just would prefer... I'd either go up to Jackson, who I just like better. I prefer that offense, even though it is not viewed as explosive as the Cardinals' offense. And I would also rather have this next guy, Jalen Hurts, entering his 3rd season in the NFL, but his 2nd season as like a true starter. The 24-year-old came in as QB9 last season. He missed 2 games. 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 3,100 passing yards, but 10 rushing touchdowns and 784 rushing yards on the ground. What could go right? This is kind of like the exact opposite of Kyler Murray. The Eagles added around their quarterback, whereas it felt like the Cardinals just lost players left and right. No Wentz, no Minshew. It's the Hurt show this year. They added A.J. Brown. I think that's going to take this passing offense up a notch, while Devonta Smith also develops as an outside threat. His 2nd year, he flashed some phenomenal moments in his rookie season, and I would not count him out as taking a massive 2nd-year leap. Per Fantasy Pros, Hurts and the Eagles have the 3rd easiest strength of schedule for quarterbacks in 2022, so that's also a check mark in the good box. And early training camp reports are saying that Hurts' accuracy is a lot better in his 2nd full offseason with the team. What could go wrong? Just like the middle of last season, the Eagles seemed happy through the first few games to kind of let Hurts do his thing. But then when they decided to start winning football games, they took the ball out of Hurts' hand at the goal line. He had 5 rushing touchdowns through week 6, but then he only scored a rushing touchdown in 2 more games the rest of the way. Now, granted, he scored 5 rushing touchdowns in those 2 games, so that is great, but are they moving away from Hurts as their main goal line back? There's some drama going on in the Eagles' backfield already, with reports that Miles Sanders is running with the 2s, Kenneth Gainwell is with the 1s. Where does Boston Scott fit in there? Definitely up in the air for the backfield, but is Hurts going to get those goal line touches? He can still obviously audible, kind of write a play in the sand and go call his own number at the goal line, but will Philadelphia still want to do that when they've invested so much in the passing game? They'll need Hurts healthy. I'm a believer in him for sure. I would take him over Kyler Murray in drafts. The addition of A.J. Brown and the second-year leap of Devonta Smith is more positive than losing Christian Kirk and DeAndre Hopkins, obviously. And I love that, at least that early season schedule. I think it does get tough for the fantasy playoffs. Next up is AFC champion quarterback Joe Burrow, his third season. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Obviously, came in as the QB8 last year. In his rookie year, he was QB19 in points per game, but that's a little skewed because he played half that game against the now Washington Commanders before tearing up his knee. Last season, he erupted at the end of the year. He came in with 34 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and 4,600 passing yards. A lot of that came in during the late season explosion of the Bengals offense as they were making their way through the Super Bowl or to the Super Bowl. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, only 118 yards the year after tearing up his knee, but what could go right? Last year was just the intro for this Bengals team. Massive investment in the offensive line means that Burrow won't be scrambling for his life in 2022 and can focus more on passing the football rather than just getting it out of bounds. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins can step it up even further if that's possible, and the Bengals announced themselves as a AFC North juggernaut for years to come with this offense. Can Chase go even higher? Possibly. Can T. Higgins even step it up and become like a 1B? Some would argue he already is. I'm maybe one of those. I'll get to that in the wide receiver episode. But we're really going to see how, if it was a mirage on their Super Bowl run or if this is here to stay. So what could go wrong? They have the 4th hardest quarterback schedule on the slate, according to Fantasy Pros, and we just have to bake in some natural regression for this offense. They were so explosive last season, so many deep touchdowns. Even Joe Burrow admitted that in the offseason that they won't be able to get as many deep passing touchdowns like they did in 2021 because teams are going to adjust. Teams in the offseason, they're going to be like, oh, we're not going to do that. We're not going to let Jamar Chase get in behind our safeties anymore. We're not going to let him be one-on-one. That's not going to happen with us. So I'm wondering if with more focus on the wide receivers, does Joe Mixon become a bigger part of this offense? It could be catching the ball, but with the offensive line investment, I am curious if some of those 34 passing touchdowns go Joe Mixon's way and maybe Burrow slips below the 30 passing touchdown mark. I don't want it to happen because Joe Burrow is a great talent. Very exciting to have him in the league, but there is a world where Joe Mixon, I know he was RB4 as someone tweeted at me when I said I'm ready for the Joe Mixon season, but I think Joe Mixon has our overall RB1 upside in this Bengals offense with how many weapons they have around him, the offensive line. So if your running back is RB1, that probably means that your quarterback has suffered a little bit. So the current ECR at, where is he? I should, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the quarterback rankings for ECR. Feels appropriate. I don't mind it at all. I just don't know if I can see myself drafting him in a 1 quarterback league. I'm not sure if there's a lot of difference between him and some of the other guys that are coming up this list later on. Next up is Tom Brady, 23rd season in the league for the 45-year-old, and he is winning the battle in Tom versus time right now, as he has come in as the QB3, QB8, and QB12 over the previous 3 seasons. That QB3 was last season in 2021, where he had 43 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and 5,300 passing yards. Even added a little 2 rushing touchdowns there, as Tom usually does. But what could go right for this team? Well, despite an offseason retirement and comeback, the Bucks don't miss a beat. Russell Gage and Julio Jones do enough to cover Chris Godwin coming back from his torn ACL, and Mike Evans continues to be the touchdown machine and consistent yards getter that he's been throughout his entire career. Plus, without Bruce Arians, who Brady did seem to kind of rub against in the later half of the 2021 season, Brady's a lot happier, and those Miami rumors don't cause a lot of problems in the clubhouse, especially now with the Dolphins getting pinged pretty hard for tampering, losing their 2023 first-round pick. That is rough. If that is anything for what Deshaun Watson can expect now that the NFL has appealed his suspension passed down by the judge, I would be very concerned if I was Deshaun Watson, because it seems like the NFL is not messing around. But what could go wrong for the GOAT, Tom Brady? Well, he's 45 years old. I know we've said this for like 7 years now. Oh, 38 years old, too old, 39, 40, 41, blah, 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 blah. But Father Time finally says enough, and he claims the final blow in Tom versus Time. That's definitely a possibility. This guy is 45 years old, and he's already lost his center. Ryan Jensen has a significant knee injury. I don't remember if he's been ruled out for the entire year yet, but it does not sound good. He may have already been. So with that absence, the Bucks struggle to keep Brady clean in 2022, and a 45-year-old body, no matter how many TB12 stretches and how little meat he eats, I don't think can handle that kind of punishment. Fortunately, he plays in the NFC South, not a super competitive division, but if he has offensive line troubles, the age somehow finally catches up to him, and if Mike Evans and Chris Godwin just don't reach the heights of seasons past, it could all fall apart for Brady in Tampa. And obviously no Rob Gronkowski. Like, that is gonna be a strange thing for Brady, not having his safety blanket in Gronkowski down in Florida. So I'm afraid to believe and not believe in Brady. On one hand, he can still sling it with the best quarterbacks in the league. On the other, those things are starting to add up. The age, Godwin's knee, the offensive line, no Gronk, like, things start to add up, and he is the greatest of all time, won a gazillion Super Bowls. He just coming off a 5,300-yard passing year, QB3 in fantasy circles. But how long can he go against the grain and avoid what we're all dreading and the end of his career? Speaking of the end of careers, this next guy, Russell Wilson, he is now in Denver, Mile High City, 33 years old, the 11th season. His last 3 seasons in the quarterback rankings, he came in as QB 16 last season, but he was QB 13 in points per game. 2020, QB 6, and QB 4 in 2019. Last season, he played 14 games. He had that finger injury that he said was all healed up. It obviously was not even close, because he was not that great after he came back. 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions for 3,100 passing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and 183 rushing yards, which was a career low. What could go right for the Let's Ride guy in Denver, Colorado? After all these years, Russ finally proves Pete Carroll was holding him back, and the Let Russ Cook crowd gets their victory lap in the 5th or 6th year of this movement. New offense, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Javonte Williams, even Melvin Gordon, Albert O, who I am going to learn how to pronounce his last name by the time the tight ends episode comes around. All those guys give Russ some of I'm not going to say some of the best weapons of his career, because he's had phenomenal weapons in Seattle, but he has new shiny toys to play with in Denver. But I think there's a lot that can go wrong for Russ. Just the way that Russ plays, a lot of it seems in Seattle, it seemed a lot was based on chemistry. Like Lockett just knew exactly where to be at all times. Those looping deep passes, like, you don't see a lot of those in the NFL. I'm just wondering, will that be able to be replicated in the Mile High City in year one? Will Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy get enough reps to kind of understand how Russ does things, where like Lockett and Metcalf and Doug Baldwin before him all had several years with Russ to learn how to adapt to the quarterback? Also, Russ is coming into a organization that has its first year head coach. Tim Patrick has already torn his ACL in training camp, so KJ Hamler is going to step up. And the other thing that could go wrong is Pete Carroll didn't let Russ cook because he realized Russ was cooked. Always danger with this grass is greener on the other side kind of stuff. The verdict that I have for this is I think he'll definitely bounce back from 2021. There's no way he performs that badly as long as he plays the whole season. But I think the top 5 days of Wilson are done. If he fails this year, he'll probably get the first year in a new environment free pass. But I think that would set off a lot of alarm bells for me. Russ has been great to watch over the years, but I'm not entirely convinced he still belongs near the elite quarterback tier. Next up, 3 to go in the top 12. Let's see how fast we can get through these. Dak Prescott for the Cowboys. 7th season, which is crazy. I can't believe he's already in his 7th season as well, kind of like the Mahomes thing. Last year, QB7. The year before that, he had that gruesome leg injury, so he was QB 33 overall, but he was on pace to obliterate some records as he was the QB1 in points per game. And the year before that, he was QB2. So he's been pretty good. Last year, he came up with 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and 4,400 passing yards. But the 1 rushing touchdown, 6 fumbles lost, and 146 rushing yards did him no favors on the ground, where he would make up some of his fantasy profile, the lowest yards per carry of his career. But what could go right for the Cowboys signal caller here? Second year back from that awful leg injury in 2020, he's going to be more confident. Mike McCarthy's already said that he wants Dak to run more, and they're going to need it because they've lost some weapons, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be tough sledding for the Cowboys this year. Dak showed us last year that he can still throw the ball quite efficiently. He's completed over 65% of his passes each of the last 4 seasons, and he's gotten over 67% in 3 of the last 4. If Zeke can stay healthy, if Tony Pollard can still be okay with that explosive role, and this becomes a more settled thunder and lightning, if Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones can keep their nose out of the play calling and let the coaches just use this duo in an effective manner despite them paying Zeke, I really think the Cowboys can have a good rushing attack, even though they did lose 2 offensive linemen. That's going to be tough. But like I said, because of the lack of weapons on offense right now, Dak returns to his rushing ways, finds the end zone at least 3 times, because over the first 5 years of his career, not including last year, he averaged 5.8 rushing touchdowns a season. But what could go wrong? I kind of already touched on it. CeeDee Lamb is kind of, in my opinion, the only good wide receiver on this roster. Michael Gallup is working his way back from an ACL tear. So I'm not saying Michael Gallup's not good, but that's rough coming off an ACL tear. Their only offseason addition in James Washington already picked up an injury this week. He's out for 6 to 10 weeks with a fractured foot. They did draft Jalen Tolbert in round 3, so that's kind of exciting, but they lost Amari Cooper. They traded him for peanuts to the Browns, and they also lost those 2 offensive linemen that I mentioned earlier. While Cooper was expensive, he was on that 5-year, $100 million contract. I'm wondering if the Cowboys, they're up against the cap because they paid Zeke, they paid Dak, they have to pay CD. They just paid Dalton Schultz. I can't remember if he ever signed that contract or not. That is escaping my brain right now. So Cooper was an obvious salary cut, but they did get something for him, I guess. But it'll be interesting to see how they do without Amari and CD on the field at the same time. As for me, I like Dak, but I'm out on him this season. I do think the Cowboys offense is going to struggle, especially in the passing department. And if the rushing doesn't come back, I don't even think he's going to finish inside the top 12 or the top 15. So if the rushing comes back, he can still be top 12 guy, but I don't think he's got a little bit more name value than I think actual fantasy value for 2022. Next up, Super Bowl champion Matthew Stafford. He's got a bye week in week 7. He's 34. Last year was the QB5, which was phenomenal. 2 years ago, he was QB16. And in 2019, he was QB4 in points per game with the Lions. Last year was obviously the first season in LA for Stafford, and it went pretty well. Won the Super Bowl, threw 41 touchdowns. Wondering what he can do with a full offseason in LA. Should be very interesting. He is just a non-factor on the ground. So definitely in that Brady at least gets some rushing touchdowns at the goal line. Stafford doesn't even do that. With Cam Akers, he should be back to full health in 2022. Van Jefferson can take a leap as long as that knee injury isn't too serious. And it does look like from those hyped up training camp videos that Allen Robinson is going to fit flawlessly into this Rams offense as the Robert Woods replacement and the Odell Beckham replacement. What could go wrong? No Robert Woods or Odell Beckham. That might throw this offense back a tiny bit. Sean McVay would talk about how critical Bobby Trees was to this offense, just with like his pass catching, his run blocking. So we'll see how they do without him for a full season. Can Allen Robinson step into that role? At least in the blocking department, I don't think there's any argument about him in a pass catching way. And slight yellow flag here with Stafford. He's already dealing with some elbow pain and is on a training camp pitch count. Not sure it's super serious. Definitely something to monitor. Would love to see him not be on a pitch count in training camp. But Sean McVay said it's nothing to worry about. They're just limiting him while they can. There's no reason to push him right now in training camp. But also, what is Sean McVay supposed to say? Is he going to be like, nope, his elbow is shot. We're screwed. But also, what else could go wrong is Cooper Kupp could just stop being the filthiest wide receiver on the planet and regresses to only a top 5 option. I mean, Stafford came in as QB5 last year. I really don't think he's going to replicate that. 41 touchdowns tied a career high. So it's tough to expect him to even exceed that, despite it being year 2 in the Rams offense. I do think Stafford is appropriately ranked here. Top 5 quarterback last season, but no one is really expecting that in 2022, especially with there's so much rushing talent at the quarterback position ahead of him and behind him in these rankings. I think if he falls down to the mid 30s in the touchdowns, he's going to be a back end QB1, high end QB2 for sure. So if you're just kind of throwing away the quarterback position in a 1 quarterback league, you can just wait. There's more options behind Stafford that I would rather take. And with his ranking in the quarterbacks, there's going to be other backup running backs, wide receiver 2s and 3s that are going to offer more upside to your fantasy roster than just grabbing Stafford. And finally, in the top 12 here, we have Trey Lance, second season, never been ranked. I mean, he played 2.5 games last season, 5 touchdowns, 2 picks, 600 passing yards, scored a touchdown on the run, or rushing touchdown in the 2.5 games he played. And he is going to be the most polarizing of quarterbacks in the rankings. What could go right for the second-year signal caller? He didn't score less than 15.6 points whenever he threw 2 or more passes in a game, so that's a good start. The keys are his. Kyle Shanahan coming out saying it's Trey Lance's team. There's no Jimmy G pressure for now. I'm not going to totally believe that until I see Garoppolo in a different NFL jersey, because the 49ers expect to win. They've got a lot of big contracts on their team, so they are still in win now mode. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, monstrous backfield. There's so many weapons for Trey Lance to help him out in his first full season in San Francisco. The 49ers went all in on Lance. They're going to build this offense around him with Kyle Shanahan, who is a phenomenal signal caller or play caller, sorry. He's not going to just run the same old offense and not play up to his quarterback strengths. He's great at just building an offense and making it flourish wherever he goes and with whoever he has. He's the logical next guy up in the late rushing quarterback era. 3 seasons ago, we had Lamar Jackson. 2 seasons ago, it was Kyler Murray. Last season, it was Jalen Hurts. Trey Lance is the obvious next in line to the throne of, you can get this guy in round 8 or 9, and he's just going to run all over the league. So definitely the next guy up in that hierarchy. But what could go wrong? I mean, literally everything. Since the end of the 2019 college season with North Dakota State, Lance has thrown a total of 101 passes in games that are counted. Played 1 game in his final season at North Dakota State, threw 71 passes last year. It's just, he's only got that 1 full season as a starter at North Dakota State as well. So he's played 1 college season since he left high school, and now he's about to step into a full 17-game season as an NFL starter. That is putting off so many alarm bells in my head. I'm very scared of Trey Lance. And like I said, what could go right, this is also what could go wrong. He's the next logical guy up in that late round rushing quarterback era. Jackson, Murray, Hurts. Could be Lance this year. However, all of those guys, Jackson, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, they all showed us something in their rookie season. They got a lot more reps, and everyone was kind of already like getting excited about them. We didn't see enough from Trey Lance. At least I didn't for myself. I just can't buy it. He can probably finish top 12 based on his rushing upside alone, but I haven't seen it. It was 2.5 games on an NFL field. I'm not going to buy it until I see Jimmy G in a different NFL jersey. If the Niners started off on a bad record, 1-3, 0-2, that kind of thing, I am curious to see what the fan base does, and if Kyle Shanahan will have some explaining to do why they aren't bringing in Jimmy G, aren't they trying to win now, all that stuff. So that was the whole top 12 broken down. So let's just go over that one more time. Josh Allen won. Herbert, Mahomes, Jackson round out the top 4. Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Tom Brady, 5-8. Wilson, Prescott, Stafford, and Lance round out the dirty dozen at the signal caller position. So who do I think is going to creep in, and who do I think is going to fall out? So I think the 3 most likely guys to fall out are Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, and Trey Lance. I've already gone over their cons. There's some issues there I have with those guys. I think everyone else in the top 12 has a better floor and weapons, and just seen them do it before, and it gives me not a lot of concern. But most likely to creep in that's outside the top 12 right now, I've got Aaron Rodgers, Trevor Lawrence, and Kirk Cousins. Rodgers is the back-to-back MVP. Not sure why we're all going against him. I'm going to believe in him until he doesn't do it. In his last 5 full healthy seasons, he's gone QB6, QB3, QB12, QB6, QB1. And he is outside the top 12 right now in Fantasy Pros ECR. I know he's lost Devontae Adams, but he at one point lost Jordy Nelson. He at one point lost Greg Jennings. These are things that great quarterbacks overcome. Like Tom Brady he won a Super Bowl with Tampa, but he was still great with some of the worst wide receiving options of his career at the end of his New England run. Rodgers has options to fill that role. Alan Lazard can definitely step up. He could be the new Devontae Adams. Who even knows? They've got plenty of young options over in Green Bay as well. He'll find another wide receiver. He tends to always do that. And I'm not concerned about Rodgers, so I will definitely be taking him happily as a late round quarterback. Trevor Lawrence, I think he has similar, maybe not similar, but if he can give me 60% of the rushing that Trey Lance can do, I know he's a better passer than Trey Lance. Yes, the 49ers have a better offense, they have a better coach, but Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl, and he is much better than the dumpster fire known as Urban Meyer that was calling plays for Trevor Lawrence in his rookie season. And I think the Jags have invested enough, getting healthy enough, that they're going to take a step forward in 2022, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And then for Kirk Cousins, he's been QB 11 in each of the last 2 seasons. I'm not predicting a QB 5 season or anything like that, but not sure when we're going to just kind of give this guy credit. He stays healthy. He's got a new offense with a new head coach that's not Mike Zimmer. He might have the best wide receiver in the league on his team in Justin Jefferson. And Adam Thielen, despite people not wanting to believe in him, is still getting it done week after week, year after year. So, my top 12 quarterbacks for the 2022 season as of August 4th, 2022, I've got Josh Allen at 1, Lamar Jackson at 2, Herbert 3, Mahomes 4, Jalen Hurts 5, Kyler Murray 6, Joe Burrow at 7, Rodgers 8, Brady 9, Russell Wilson 10, Stafford 11, and Dak Prescott 12. For now, obviously there's a whole month to go until the season starts, so a lot can change during training camp, but that is how I am feeling about the quarterback position as of right now. I'm not sure which position I'll do next. Tempted to do tight ends just because that's only going to be 12 guys that I'll go through there, and I'll need a lot more time to prep for the running backs and wide receivers. But like I said at the top of the episode, you can follow me on Twitter at UN or You Out. That's EUAN or You Out. You can like and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Overcast, all those fun places. This is going to be part 1 of a series where I look at all of the Fantasy Pros ECR at the 4 main fantasy positions, and hopefully it will give you some helpful hints as the NFL preseason rolls along. But once again, thanks for listening. Looking forward to fantasy football season, and I will talk to you next time.